Hello everyone, welcome to Just Academy. In this tutorial I'm going to talk about the introduction to lights in Renderman for Maya. So let's go to the shelf tool. So in Renderman shelf tools you can see this little section. This is the responsible for creating all the lights in Renderman. So you can see there is a triangle on top of some of the buttons. If you right click on top of those buttons, so you can see the sub menu. So you can see a lot of other options here. So all the lights are categorized by its types. So if you right click on the first button, so you can see the rectangular light and disk light or distant light. So we can create all the analytic lights from this menu. So I'm not going to talk about the PX or AOV light in this tutorial because it's a little confusion thing to talk about this at this moment. And the second button is responsible for create the dome light or environment daylight or light portal, and this button is responsible for create mesh light. So if you select an object and you click this button, so it will convert the object into the mesh light. And this little button is responsible for light filters. I'm not going to talk about the light filters in this tutorial because it is a big topic, so I'm planning this for a different tutorial. So yeah, so let's focus on this menu first. And if you look at this, let's first create a rectangular light. And if you look at the rectangular light, and I'm going to create a dome light also. And if you compare both the lights, so you can see here, so this is the rectangular light, and if I go to the dome light, and you can still see all the options are pretty much same. So you can see everything here. So I don't have to explain all the lights. So let me explain the rectangular light, and that is pretty much enough for handling the other lights also. But let's first create all the available lights from this list. Okay, so these are all the available lights from this menu. So if you look at this, all the lights are pretty much self-explanatory by its the look of the light itself, and the naming of the light also explain what it is. So pretty much we are using we have the rectangle light, and we have the disk light. The shape is the different thing, otherwise all the behaviors all same. And we have the cylinder light. So let's say if you want to mimic a tube light from the real world, so you can use this cylinder light. And this one is sphere light or radial light, so it will emit the light for 360 degrees. So, and this one is these four lights are pretty much working very same way, but this light works different because this light has no decay. I mean, this is an infinite light, so you don't have to place near to an object in order to illuminate that object. This is an infinite light, so you can use this light to mimic sun or moon kind of effect. So let's focus on the rectangle light. And let's place this. When it comes to placing light, we have several options to place the lights. So if you look at this, we have the standard manipulators available for us to place the light, and we have another option, which is if you select the light and go to the panel, select this look through selector, and you can kind of place the light. The light itself will become a camera, and you can place the light as you want. You can press focus, so you can rotate the light and move the light as we want. And if I go to the perspective again, so now you can see the light itself is moved and rotated. And let me undo it for now. And we have another option, which is if you press T in your keyboard, select this guy. So we have two different manipulators. So one is for the focus constraint. So wherever you take this guy and you can if you notice the light itself is rotating, and it always focuses this point. So you can place this focus point the place where you want to focus. So you can move the light, so you can place wherever that you want. So in this case, let me place a light like this. So yeah, let's place the light like this. Okay, we have got the light and we have placed it the way that we want, and maybe this is the time to launch the render, and let's check what the render gives us. So as you can see here, so we are not getting anything because we don't have the proper intensity, the exposure to the light. So the first thing that we have to do is we need to increase the exposure in order to get the brightness. So we can see here we have two different options. The first one is intensity, the other one is exposure. You may get confused why we need two options to do the same, but there's a reason. That is, in real world we are using photographs, and we are getting HDRI images, or we are getting the real world light through the exposure values. So the exposure value is kind of an unit to measure the real world light. So if you want to match the lighting to be to a real world scenario, so you can use this exposure value. So and this intensity is it's a overall switch. It's a 0 to 1. So if you set this to 0, so it's pretty much the light is turned off, so it emits no light to the scene. So when you set this 1, so the total control is exposure, and this is the multiplier, so you can increase more than 1 and it will multiply the exposure by this value. So let's keep this value as it is, and okay, for now this exposure value is also fine. And we have the color, so if you want to tint the light, you can use this color option. So let's say, so you can set any color that you want, and we have the color map option here. Let's say if you have a proper HDRI, and if you want to mimic a particular light, if you connect that HDRI of that particular light, so if you shot it properly, all the lighting informations will be in that light, and all the moment you connected the HDRI in this color map, it will emit proper lighting to the scene. And the map gamma is responsible for controlling the contrast of the HDRI image that we connect here. And we have the map saturation. So if your HDRI image that you connected here has a lot of color tints, and if you want to get rid of those, you can reduce the saturation. So and we have the temperature. If you enable this, so you can see here got a little color. So if you decrease the value towards 2000 or 3000, as you can see here, it kind of gives some orangey or yellowish tint to the light, and it uses the black body measurements. So we usually use this for mimicking a fire kind of light, or a candle light, or a tungsten light, or a sunlight kind of effect. The more you increase, the light will become bluish. So you can see here. So let's turn this off, and we have primary visibility here. So if you want your light to be visible to the render, so you can enable this button. So if I turn this off, so it will not be visible. By default it will be turned off. So if you want the light to be visible, so you can use this. And we have emission focus. So emission focus is a cool thing. If you increase the value, and you can see it kind of work like a spotlight. So it kind of create a blockers the background. So so as you can see here, it focuses the particular region of the light direction. And the more I increase as you can see here, the more I increase the exposure or the intensity of the light is reducing. So in order to avoid this, you can use this emission focus normalize. So when you enable this, so it emits so much light to the scene, and sometimes it works weird. So let's turn this off. So it usually kind of normalizing the emission focus. When you increase the emission focus, it actually scale the light itself. So in order to maintain the same exposure, so you can use this, and you can use the emission focus tint to give some color to the area that is being that become black. So as you can see here, if I decrease this emission focus, so you can see here, so all the shadow areas are now become so the emission focus tint color. So you can give any color that you want, and if you enable this thing, so it will not be available for us. So you have to always keep this in mind when you enable this. And we have the specular amount here. So if I decrease the specular amount, you can see here all the very sudden we are not getting any specular to the scene. So I mean the light's specular contribution will be cut down. So and the same way we have the diffuse amount. So if you decrease the diffuse, so we don't have any diffuse contributions from this particular lights. So let's reset this, and we have the intensity near distance. Let's reset this, guys, for a while for now. So we have the intensity near distance. So let's say okay, let's place the light near to the object. Let's say if I increase the exposure, so I want to lit this guy up, so I'm going to increase this. But if you notice, this particular object is getting washed out because it is very near to the light. So in order to avoid this kind of problem, so you can use this intensity near distance. So the more you increase, let's set this to 50. Okay, let's go for some high values. Okay, so now you can clearly see this. So this area, it's still light, the lighting is the way that we want, and it is not bleaching, and it's not washed out anymore. So you can see here, so intensity near distance. So this is a very cool option, and we usually use this option in the production very much. So most of the times we'll use this thing to match the live action thing, or directing our light. And we have the cone angle. So cone angle is work like a it's directly work like a spotlight. And if you look at this, you can see here, so it focus at some point, and you can increase the cone softness. So currently these edges were very sharp. When you increase the cone softness, it'll give some softness to the edges. Then we have the light profile here. If you have the IES light profile, so you can use the IES light map. You can connect this here, so you can increase the scale of the IES light profile also. And we have the shadows option here. So this shadow option, so if you want, you can disable the shadows. So now you can see here, so there is no casting shadow in our scene. We have only the self shadows available. So it works in several places. I usually, when I work in production, sometimes the scene will be a little darker, and if I want to work in a particular shader, and if I want to check the textures of the shaders works fine, so I usually use this. So when I cut down this, so all the darkness will be go away, and I can see the textures are working fine or not. So let's enable this, and we can use this for some other options also. The shadow color is there. Let's say if you wanna give some tint to the shadows, and maybe if you wanna kind of mimic bounce like kind of effect, so you can use this shadow color. Let's say if you wanna mimic a blue bounce light, so you can use this. Maybe let's set a blue color. Let's see. Yeah. So now you can see here. So we are kind of getting some blue. Bluish kind of bounce like kind of effects, and this is still a cheat. So I usually don't use this in most of the times. If you want to create some stylized lights, so you can use this the shadow color. Let's set this as it is, and we have the shadow max distance. Let's say our light is placed this way, and one common tip is, so usually when the light size is very small, so the shadows will become sharp, and you can see here now the shadows are become very sharp as we decrease the size of the light. And when you increase the shape of the light, so we are getting very soft shadow, and when I increase, you can see here the light intensity goes up, and when I decrease it goes down. In order to avoid this kind of a situation, this kind of a thing, so you can use this normalize in advanced. So when you enable this, now if you look at this, all the very sudden the light's intensity gone. So now you have to set the proper value, and now if I change the value, it still maintain the same intensity, even though the light size is changed, the intensity is same. So we usually use this technique to match the shadows. And the shadow max distance. So let's say if you don't want the shadow of this object to be on top of this background, so you can use the shadow max distance. Initially by default it will be in the -1. If it is in the -1, it is actually infinite, so it uses the full shadow range. So when you set this value to a particular number, so if I change, now you can see here we are actually controlling the distance through these values. So now you can see here, so if I change the value, the shadow distance is also changing. And you have the shadow fall off, so when you increase this, so you can soften the shadow. So we have the shadow fall off gamma, so this is for the shadows, the contrast of the shadow fall off. And okay, let's reset everything as it is. Okay, we have trace subsets. I will talk about this in the later tutorials. And we have the normalize, we already talked about this. And we have the trace light paths, so this is responsible for caustics from the lights. And we have the thin shadow, so thin shadow is an important thing. So let's say if we have a glass object in our scene, let me create a glass material quickly. So let's say if you have a glass object in your glass material in your scene, and this thin shadows, the thin shadow thing, if this is turned off, so it will not calculate, it will not consider this object as a glass object. So we usually have to turn this on when we use a glass object in our scene, and this option is for visible and refraction. Let's place the light. Okay, so if you look at this, after I turned it off, so the light will not be visible through the refraction. So, and we have the light samples. Let's replace the light as it was. So okay, so now we have the light samples. So light samples is it's pretty self-explanatory. So this is the sampling, so controlling the noise. If I increase this value to 8, so you can clearly see we are now getting very less noise to the scene. So the more you increase this value will reduce the noise. As you can see here, so light is the primary thing in rendering. So most of the times we will get noise from the light only. So the first place I usually go to control the noise is lights. So you have to increase the light samples first to control the noise, and we have the importance multiplier. The importance multiplier is let's say if you have 20 or 30 lights, and if you have particular light produce a lot of noise, and if you want to increase the sample to that particular particular light alone, so you can increase the importance multiplier, and that particular light that gets more importance multiplier will get more sampling, so that you can control the sampling of the light easily. So the light group is responsible for creating separate light groups in the AOVs. We will talk about in the AOV session. We have the light filters here. So if you right click, so you can see all the light filters that is available in PureMan. So I mean Renderman from Maya. So if you want to use multiple light filters, you can just right click, and you can select append, so that you will get multiple slots for connecting light filters. And we will talk about the light filters in a later tutorial, as I said. So I think that's it for this tutorial. We are pretty much covered everything from the lights. So thanks for watching.